Have you ever felt like something was off? Like the world you see, the reality you experience, is just a pale imitation, a flickering shadow of something bigger, something realer? Like you're watching a play, but you're not quite sure what the play is about, or who wrote it, or even if the actors are following a script, or just improvising their way through a meaningless charade. That unsettling feeling, that nagging suspicion that there's more to existence, more to life, than meets the eye, is something that has haunted humanity for centuries. It's a question that has driven philosophers, theologians, artists, and even scientists to the very edges of reason and creativity, pushing them to explore the fundamental nature of reality itself. This deep-seated unease, this persistent questioning of what we perceive to be real, is a uniquely human trait. We're not content with simply accepting the world as it appears to us. We have an innate drive to understand it, to delve beneath the surface and uncover the underlying truths. And it's a question that Plato, one of the most influential philosophers of all time, wrestled with over 2,000 years ago, giving us a framework for thinking about knowledge and reality that remains powerfully relevant even today. His exploration of this profound unease, this fundamental questioning of reality, gave us one of the most powerful and enduring thought experiments ever conceived, the allegory of the cave. Today, we're going to embark on a fascinating journey into the depths of Plato's philosophical masterpiece, unpack its intricate layers of meaning, and explore why this ancient allegory still resonates with us, still challenges us, still provokes us in the 21st century. We'll journey into the depths of Plato's brilliant and often challenging mind, exploring his groundbreaking ideas about knowledge, reality, and the very nature of truth itself. We'll examine his arguments about the limitations of our senses, the power of reason, and the importance of philosophical inquiry. We'll see if we can emerge, blinking, into the sunlight of true understanding, or if we'll be forever trapped in the shadows of our own preconceptions, clinging to comfortable illusions rather than facing the often uncomfortable truth. We'll consider how Plato's allegory speaks to our own time, a time of unprecedented access to information, yet also a time of widespread misinformation and manipulation, where the lines between truth and falsehood are often blurred. Imagine a group of prisoners. Picture them chained in a dark, subterranean cave, their legs and necks bound so that they can only stare at the rough, uneven wall in front of them. They've been in this cave since birth. It's the only world they've ever known. They've never seen the sun, the sky, or the vibrant tapestry of life outside. All they know is the cave wall and the flickering shadows that dance across it. Behind them, a fire burns, casting light into the cave, and between the fire and the prisoners, other people, unseen by the prisoners, pass by, carrying various objects, statues of animals, tools, everyday items. The prisoners, because they can't turn their heads, see only the distorted, moving silhouettes of these objects flickering on the cave wall. These shadows are their reality. They are all they've ever known. They give names to the shadows: tree, horse, man. They discuss them, they analyze their movements, they develop complex theories to explain their appearances and disappearances. They build their entire understanding of the world, their entire system of knowledge, their entire culture, based on these fleeting, distorted images. They even likely have competitions, awarding prizes to the prisoner who can most accurately predict the next shadow to appear, becoming experts in their limited and distorted field of shadowology. Think about it. If you'd only ever seen shadows, wouldn't you believe that those shadows were reality? Wouldn't you develop a whole system of knowledge, a whole language, a whole culture, based on the movement and shapes of those shadows? Wouldn't you become an expert in shadowology, developing intricate theories about their behavior and interactions? That's the prisoner's predicament. Their world is a construct, a limited, incomplete, and ultimately false version of what's actually real. They are living in a world of illusions, mistaking the representations of reality for reality itself. They are trapped in a cycle of perceiving and interpreting shadows, never realizing that there's a whole world beyond their limited perception. They are, in essence, living in a simulation, unaware of the true reality outside. Now, imagine one of the prisoners is freed. Someone, perhaps a philosopher or a wise teacher, takes pity on them and cuts their chains, and they are forced to turn around. At first, the light of the fire would be blinding, excruciatingly painful. Everything would be disorienting. The prisoner wouldn't understand what they were seeing. Their initial reaction might be to recoil, to retreat back to the familiar, comforting darkness of the shadows. The process of adjusting to this new reality, The reality beyond the shadows, the reality of the fire and the objects, would be difficult, even traumatic. They might even resent the person who freed them, for disrupting their comfortable illusions, for shattering their carefully constructed worldview. The familiar, even if it's false, can be incredibly seductive. We often cling to our beliefs, even when faced with evidence to the contrary, because they provide us with a sense of security and certainty in an uncertain world. But, slowly, as their eyes adjust, the freed prisoner begins to see the objects that were casting the shadows. They begin to understand that the shadows were merely representations, imperfect and distorted copies, of something more real, something more substantial. They begin to grasp the concept of the objects themselves, the things that were previously hidden from their sight. They start to understand the relationship between the objects and the shadows, how the shapes and movements of the objects create the patterns on the wall. And then, finally, they venture outside the cave, into the world beyond. The sunlight, the vastness of the sky, the vibrant, breathtaking colors of the world, it's all overwhelming. The prisoner, accustomed to the dim, flickering light of the cave, would struggle to comprehend the true nature of reality. They might even be tempted to return to the cave, to the familiar world of shadows, because the truth, the sheer brilliance of reality, is too much to bear, too much to process. The comfort of the familiar, even if it's false, can be incredibly seductive. The sheer scale of reality, the infinite possibilities, can be frightening and disorienting. But, if they persevere, if they allow themselves to adapt, if they embrace the discomfort of the unknown, they begin to see the world as it truly is. They see the sun, the source of light and life, and they understand that it's the ultimate source of truth and knowledge. They begin to understand that the shadows they once believed to be real were nothing more than illusions, fleeting and insubstantial. They realize the profound depth of their former ignorance, the extent to which they were deceived by their limited perception. They begin to understand the interconnectedness of everything, the underlying principles that govern the universe. Now, let's bring this allegory back to ourselves. What does it mean for us, living in the 21st century? What is the cave in our lives? And what are the shadows that we mistake for reality? Plato argues that the cave represents the world of appearances, the world we perceive with our senses, the world of sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and textures. It's the world of our everyday experiences. The shadows are the illusions that we mistake for reality. They are the superficial, the transient, the things that distract us from the true nature of things. We are, in a sense, all prisoners in our own caves, limited by our perspectives, our biases, our cultural conditioning, and the often overwhelming barrage of information and misinformation that bombards us daily. We cling to comfortable illusions, to readily accepted narratives, rather than face the often uncomfortable, challenging truth. We often prefer the easy answers to the difficult questions, the familiar to the unknown. Our cave can be our social circles, our cultural norms, our political ideologies, even our own ingrained habits of thinking. The fire represents a limited form of knowledge, perhaps the knowledge we gain through education, through social conditioning, or through the media. But it's not the ultimate truth. It's still a step removed from true understanding. It can even be used to manipulate us, to reinforce our illusions. Think about the way information is presented to us, how narratives are crafted to influence our opinions and beliefs. The fire can be used to cast shadows of its own, creating sophisticated and persuasive illusions that can be even harder to discern than the simple shadows on the cave wall. The objects being carried represent the forms or ideas that exist in the real world, according to Plato. These forms are the true objects of knowledge, the perfect, unchanging, eternal essences of things. For example, there's the form of beauty itself, which is far more real and lasting than any beautiful object we might see in the world. A beautiful flower will eventually wither and die, but the form of beauty, the essence of beauty itself, remains eternal. Similarly, there's the form of justice, the form of goodness, the form of truth. These forms are the ultimate objects of philosophical inquiry, the true subjects of knowledge. And the sun? The sun, the source of light and life in the allegory, represents the form of the good, the ultimate source of all truth, all knowledge, and all being. It's the highest level of understanding, the realization that everything is interconnected, that there is an underlying order and purpose to the universe. It's the understanding that allows us to see the world as it truly is, beyond the distortions of our senses and our preconceptions. The form of the good is not simply goodness itself, but also the source of all other forms, the ultimate principle of reality. It's what gives everything else its meaning and value. Understanding the form of the good is the ultimate goal of philosophical inquiry, the highest form of knowledge. The freed prisoner represents the philosopher, the seeker of truth. The philosopher is the one who questions the accepted realities, who dares to venture outside the cave, who is willing to confront the true nature of existence, even if it's painful, even if it's unpopular. They are the ones who strive for enlightenment, for a deeper, more profound understanding of themselves and the world around them. They are driven by a relentless curiosity, a thirst for knowledge, and a deep desire to understand the fundamental nature of reality. They are not content with simply accepting the world as it is presented to them. They are driven to ask why, and how, and what if. But Plato also makes a crucial and often overlooked point about the philosopher's responsibility. Once the philosopher has seen the truth, once they have experienced the brilliance of the sun, they have a duty, a moral imperative, to return to the cave and share their knowledge with the other prisoners. This is often a difficult and dangerous task. The prisoners, comfortable in their ignorance, clinging to their familiar illusions, may not believe the philosopher. They may ridicule them, they may dismiss them as crazy, they may even persecute them, as they did Socrates. They may prefer the familiar darkness to the unsettling light of truth. They may even be hostile to the philosopher, seeing them as a threat to their established order, to their comfortable worldview. They may resist change, even if that change is for the better, because it disrupts their sense of stability and control. Think about Socrates, Plato's teacher. He was condemned to death in Athens for challenging the conventional wisdom of his time, for questioning the accepted shadows of Athenian society. He was seen as a dangerous subversive, a threat to the status quo, because he dared to encourage people to think for themselves, to question their assumptions, to seek truth. He challenged the prevailing notions of justice, piety, and virtue, and he did so not by simply asserting his own opinions, but by engaging in rigorous dialogue, by asking probing questions, by forcing people to examine their own beliefs. His method, known as the Socratic method, is still used today as a powerful tool for critical thinking and philosophical inquiry. So, what can we learn from the allegory of the cave? It teaches us to be critically aware of our own perceptions, to question the assumptions we make about the world, to be skeptical of what we are told, even by seemingly authoritative sources. It challenges us to examine our own caves, the limitations of our perspectives, the biases that shape our understanding of reality. It encourages us to seek knowledge and understanding, even if it means venturing outside our comfort zones, even if it means confronting uncomfortable truths. It reminds us that true reality may be far different from what we perceive with our senses, and that the journey towards understanding requires courage, intellectual humility, and a willingness to question everything. The allegory of the cave is not just a philosophical thought experiment, it's a powerful metaphor for the human condition. We are all, in a sense, prisoners in our own caves, limited by our perspectives, our experiences, and our cultural conditioning. The journey out of the cave is a lifelong process, a continuous striving for truth and understanding. It's a journey that requires us to constantly examine our beliefs, to be open to new ideas, and to be willing to change our minds in the face of new evidence. It's a journey that can be challenging, even painful, but it's also a journey that can be incredibly rewarding, leading us to a deeper, more meaningful understanding of ourselves and the world around us. And that journey, my friends, is perhaps the most important journey we can ever take. What do you think? What are the shadows in your life? What are the truths that you've never questioned? What is your cave? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more explorations into the world of philosophy. Because the search for truth, like the journey out of the cave, is a journey we must all take for ourselves. It's a journey that never truly ends, but it's in the striving, in the constant questioning, that we find true wisdom. It's a journey that requires courage, intellectual humility, and a willingness to question everything, including our most cherished beliefs. It's a journey that can lead us to uncomfortable truths, forcing us to confront our own biases and prejudices. But it's also a journey that can liberate us from ignorance, allowing us to see the world with greater clarity and understanding. It's a journey that can ultimately lead us to a more fulfilling and meaningful life. The allegory of the cave also speaks to the importance of education. True education, according to Plato, is not simply the acquisition of information, but the turning of the soul towards the light, the awakening of the mind to the true nature of reality. It's about helping people to see beyond the shadows, to question their assumptions, and to develop their own capacity for critical thinking. It's about empowering individuals to become independent thinkers, capable of discerning truth from falsehood, and of making informed judgments about the world around them. This kind of education is not just about learning facts and figures. It's about cultivating wisdom, about fostering a love of truth, and about inspiring a lifelong pursuit of knowledge.